There we go. Good morning. So, like I said, there's going to be some open and honest language from my agents who are in this. So if that is upsetting to you, then just tune out anytime. But I decided to get going. I've been in real estate for 20 years, and all my agents know, and many of you know, that when I got into real estate and I started making mistakes right away, like all of you are making, it's okay to make mistakes. I started creating a checklist of all the items that I had made mistakes on to make sure that I wasn't going to keep making the same mistake again, right? So those became my checklist, the things that I just want to make sure I'm not ever doing again. But what was fun for me is to reach out to other agents and also see what are those 2 or 3 things that you just wish you knew before you got into real estate. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with one of my favorite agents, Kelly Spitzer, in my office. She's been around for what seems like ever and ever. And I'm just going to read you what she wrote. She actually, the first time I taught this, she came to the class and probably 15 minutes kept talking about the things she wished she knew. But I'm going to go ahead and read her summary. She said, I don't know if this is what you're looking for in terms of things I wish I knew, but here are some things that I've realized about the profession. Number 1, you will do a lot of things that you have no idea how to do. So you need to be comfortable asking for help and learning as you go. Number 2, this profession made me 1,000,000 times more patient and understanding than I thought was possible. So speaking of Kelly, she once had a closing that happened, and I can't remember the situation, but there was a closing and then there was a fire and an evacuation. So I think what happened is her people that closed ended up in the mountains, and then the road was closed and they couldn't get to their animals. And she drove about 4 hours all the way around to get to these animals for her buyers that had just closed like the day before, to kind of rescue them from the place and get them back to Durango. So talking about patient and understanding, she's the kind of person that she didn't do it on Facebook or Instagram. She just went out there and did the right thing for her people. And it just was an afterthought that she happened to tell me the next day, oh my God, you will not believe what I had to do yesterday to help save these animals. The fire didn't damage anything, any of the units there. The mudslides later did on some of them, but that just shows who Kelly Spitzer is and the kind of patient and understanding that she is. Number 3, I love this one. I hated cold calling leads for at least a solid 3 years, and I'd make excuses as to why not to call them. The whole process is counterintuitive to who I am, but it's necessary in this profession. Sums it up, right? Sometimes you just have to call people that you don't know. Number 4, you have to, it's underlined, work weekends and after regular business hours. At the same time, you must set boundaries on when you will be available for business. It's okay not to answer your phone during dinner. Your family will thank you for that the quicker you learn that. Number 5, always put your safety above everything else. Does everybody here know what forewarn is or use forewarn? Hopefully if you don't, ask your manager about it. It's important that you screen your customers before you jump in a car to go meet them. Number 6, you're self-employed, which means you pay all of your own taxes. So save 30% of each paycheck and pay your quarterlies so you don't get a penalty. If anybody needs to interrupt and say, I don't know what that means, like, please just jump in anytime. Number 7, I love this. I love Kelly. You probably won't immediately love real estate. It's hard. For most of us, the money doesn't come easy. And it's not just about showing houses and all of that HGTV shit. HGTV is fantasy land. If that's why you got into the business, quit now, because you will be ridiculously disappointed. Number 8, be yourself, because if you're fake, people will sense it and they won't want to do business with you. Number 9, it's okay to not take a listing. Number 10, you will be called horrible names by clients and other agents. It's never okay, and it will make you feel like shit. I could probably go on with a list of 50, like someone else in my office, but then everyone will groan. So she stopped there, but then she thought of more things. So she sent me additional emails. One of them was, you don't have to put up with a-holes. There are plenty of people out there who will appreciate your help, your expertise, and professionalism. And here's one more. You will make mistakes, and sometimes it will cost you money. Just own it. Love it. Hey, one of our houses that I built was on HGTV, and they chose our house. That's so cool, Lewis. That's great. Okay, here's one from, let's do Ashley next. Ashley wrote this, Ashley Truitt in my office. She was a newer agent when she wrote this. And she said, I can't make the class, but a point that might be helpful to your meeting. When I got my license and started practicing the business of real estate, there are so many different systems and software for business management, marketing, and advertising for realtors. I found that I spent a lot of time trying to work out which ones to use and at what cost, instead of just making a start and utilizing the systems that Coldwell Banker provides. I also spent quite a lot of money testing things when I could have just gone on with what was available to me. Message, Nike, just do it. Okay, that was Ashley. Let's go on to, I love Lindsay Lubrant she's our number 2 in the office right now. When she was maybe a year into real estate, she wrote this. The things I wish I knew. Your managing broker is everything to your success. Everything. Number 2, it's a really small town. Beware. Number 3, other brokers are your friends, not your enemies. Goes along with it being a very small town. Be very careful about what you're doing. If you're the kind of person who has your name on the side of your car, don't be flipping people off or running people off the road, because you will find out about it soon at the grocery store. And number 4, this was an inside joke, but as a newer agent, she got in big trouble on a title work deal. She didn't order it. She just forgot. So she wrote, always order title right away. Muy importante. So remember to order your title work if you're on the seller side. And if you're not on the seller side, make sure that somebody ordered your title work. Okay, let's go on to Patrick Jones. Couple of things for you that I wish I had known. There is always a second negotiation on price when the inspection report comes in. So at least in Colorado, I'm sure it's this way in all of your areas. When you get the inspection report, it's very common, maybe not in this market so much. The buyer might say, we're good, don't worry about it. Some things came up, but we'll take care of it, because they know there's 3 backup offers on the property. But when you're telling the seller that if you take this offer, then you won't have to deal with anything else, there's always going to be something else that comes in. You're going to jinx yourself by saying that, and something could come in on the inspection that they want you to take care of. I wouldn't say always, but it happens whenever. If you open your big mouth, then that's when you get jinxed. And number 2, this is a good one. Personal items such as furniture, art, etc., that are inclusions to the purchase, as is common with second homes, as we get in a lot of our areas, can be difficult to define and can cause problems unless handled very carefully. And what he means by that, so in Colorado, we have a personal property agreement. You don't necessarily have to do this with your contract unless the lender is asking you for one. You put everything you want in the contract if you know what you want at the time. So when I worked up at the resort, we had a specific way of doing our contracts that asked for 4 things. It said all furnishings, including linens, silverware or diningware. So you're talking about linens. This is let's say it's an Airbnb. You want the linens, right? So you can go and make the beds. You want the diningware. You don't want anybody to take out the nice wine glasses. You want the electronics, because if somebody takes the fancy TV set, that's a big deal, right? And then you're asking for the furnishings too, meaning like the furniture. I also find wall hangings are very important to mention. And then if you're on the seller side, you always want to make sure that the exclusion, if it's a Airbnb type property, are personal belongings of the owner to be, you can specify them if you need to. That means their picture of the grizzly bear that they took in Yellowstone 30 years ago wasn't meant to be a art object. It was meant to come with the seller when they left. The antler chandelier that they're tied to, the pictures of their old ski passes on the walls. If you're on the seller side, make sure to have something in there that defines that those things are going to be taken out. Does that all make sense? Doing something with personal property can be super challenging. Let's see, just make sure there's no messages. Okay, that's it for Patrick. I'm such a handwriting person. I just printed these all out. Here's Marilyn. Marilyn Lang. Coming from a W-2 background, I didn't know much about accounting for a small business and the tax ramifications. Found out there are many different interpretations, even amongst accountants. Many Coldwell Banker agents lacked basic knowledge after being in the business for many years. Figure out your system and stick to it. Make it easy or you won't do it and always will be behind. It should be a benefit, not a mental drain. Love it. Okay, so here's some other little pieces. Here's one from someone about, okay, propane tanks. You deal with propane tanks in rural areas, and when they are full, let's say it's a 1,000-gallon tank, full is 80%. They're not full. So just be aware that those are something that you need to prorate at closing, and somebody has to check how much propane is in the tank. You want to take a picture, send it to the other agent, and determine how it's going to be prorated before you get to the closing table. Dirt roads and septic. Here's one from me. Don't assume that people from other areas know that we have dirt roads. I was shocked when I moved to Colorado and discovered there were a lot of dirt roads in my community. It's just not something like when I was a little kid, my parents would get us in the car after like we had ice cream one night for someone's birthday and we'd go down the dirt road. It was like an exciting thing to go check it out. It was some construction road. So that's not a normal thing for people from other areas, especially if they're in cities. Also septic tanks. I've gotten into it with buyers that I just didn't know that that was a thing. Like I'm so used to, my internet connection is unstable. If I'm freezing, sorry about that. But yeah, septic tanks, don't assume that somebody knows or assumes that knows what that is at all. Don't make it a big deal. But when you're explaining that, okay, there's some things you wanted to go have a mountain home. We have wells here, we have septic tanks, things like that. Just know that don't make it a big deal or it will be a big deal to the buyer, but explain that it's just normal and customary for your area. Here's one from someone. It doesn't matter if the sellers don't respond in the time frame that you put in the contract. So as a new agent, we have had multiple instances where you have a new agent that says, oh, don't worry, they have to respond by noon. That's what I put in the offer. They don't have to respond by any time they don't want to respond, as long as they're countering you, right? They can't accept the offer after the time you put in there unless both people initial buy it. But don't ever tell your customer, if you're on the buyer side, that they will definitely get back to you by a certain time because you just don't know. Oh, here's a good one. Leave the key in the lock while you're showing the property. Has anybody had that happen to them yet where they can't find the key and they go to lock up the house? It has happened to me multiple times. So you unlock the door, and unless there's a security issue where you're showing a property, you have one place that you always put the key. And I used to just leave it in the lock so that I wouldn't get discombobulated. I'm with my buyer for the first time. I'm excited to talk to them. And that key is going to be set somewhere and you're never going to find it again. Have to follow up. No HOA. I don't even know what that means. Okay, let's move on. How about this? If you're especially if you're a lady, but guys too, if you're wearing nice dress shoes. In Colorado, I've learned to always in the back of my car have some like mud boots, right? So we have 5 seasons here. We have summer, fall, winter, spring, and then we have mud season. So there's sometimes that you're all dressed up for floor and your customer said, oh, there's that new lot just came on the market. Can we go walk it? And they aren't the kind of customer that you can like just show it from the car. You got to go tromp around in the snow or in the mud. So to save yourself the losing a pair of high heels or some nice dress shoes, always have some kind of ugly sneakers or boots in the car. I learned quickly for a jacket too. I forgot I don't know what happened to me one day. I wore a fancy jacket and I ended up standing, it's a $900,000 piece of development property up at Perg. He wants to show it. This buyer wants to show it, and I'm representing the seller. The seller wants to be there at 5:30 at night. And in the mountains, 5:30 at night in January, there's no sun. So I stood out there for probably an hour and a half, and I just kept my mouth closed as I'm shivering and shaking and about to get pneumonia, but I wasn't going to lose the deal over me being cold and forgetting my stupid jacket. So make sure if it's wintertime, you're prepared for always going out and showing the property. Anything yet that you guys are like, oh, that's so me? Okay. Here's another one. Oh, boots and jacket. I got that one. Oh, I hate this one. This has also happened. Has anybody had a customer that didn't understand that the earnest money check actually gets cashed? So if somebody's writing a check, it actually goes into a bank account. So if you have, now we have so many people that just wire the funds over the earnest money. And because there is such a thing as an earnest money deadline now, didn't used to be, maybe in your state, they don't have it, but we have an earnest money deadline. That means you don't have to actually proffer the check when you have the contract. It just comes a few days later once you get it under contract. It used to be, you had to have that check with the contract for it to be valid, right? But what happens is people write the check and they just thought it like sat in your folder somewhere until closing. So they'd have no money in their account. And immediately when it goes under contract, they cash the check would bounce. The seller's mad. They're like, what do you mean you wrote, like, this buyer isn't for real? And you're like, oh my God. And they go, well, I thought you were just holding the check. So just explain to people in a very nice way that I'm just reminding you that the second, so if it's one that's being proffered with the offer, or even, 2 days later, say the second I hand this in, they're going to cash the check if it goes under contract. So it will be sitting in a trust account. It's not going to the seller unless there's something funny written into your contract. It just goes into a trust account and is used against the purchase price at closing. I've had that happen a couple of times too. So they're like, wait, so it's a $300,000 house and $5,000 for the earnest money? I'm like, no, it all goes together. That's, most people understand that, but definitely will hold your check. No checks are held. Here's another lady. I never dreamed there was so much administration work, the follow-up, the documentation, the communication, the note-taking, the differences between what was having keys and not having a phone on you, and now how agents are expected to be so super knowledgeable to show and prove what you can do. So if somebody had been in real estate a long time, they might have always done real estate a certain way. You're lucky in a way. You're getting into real estate now that you understand, like, people can look up the house on Zillow. They don't need you to know that there is a house for sale. So you got to figure out your value in a different way and be able to communicate that better, because it could be back in the day, 25 years ago, people had the book. And if you were a realtor, you owned the book, you owned the MLS, nobody else could get to it. But now you have to get really good at quantifying your value and being able to speak to that, having your testimonials on your Google business page. All those kind of things are super important. Any questions? Anything someone wants to interrupt and tell me? Okay, got a few more. I'm going to break it up. I have, before I do the next ones and do my 10 commandments of customer service. So I don't have another place to do this during the year, so I'm going to read it now. The 10 commandments of customer service. This came from Ninja Selling. Number 1, customers are the most important people in our business. Customers are not dependent on us. We are dependent on them. Customers are not an interruption of our work. They are the purpose of it. Customers do us a favor when they call. We are not doing them a favor by serving them. How many people in your market just don't get back to they don't get back to their customers? It's like a joke. They just don't call people. I don't know how they're still in business. Customers are a part of our business, not outsiders. Customers are not cold statistics or units. They are flesh and blood, human beings with feelings, dreams, and emotions like our own. Oh, that has to do with all the, if you're somebody that is a statistic person, I'm a statistic person, but be really careful when you're posting things online to not just say, I've had 20 deals this year. I've done $3 million. It's about the people you serve. It's not about your numbers. So if you decide to post or in some way share how much business you have done, do it in a warm way that talks about who you helped. I have heard agents, top agents on the phone talking about how, well, of course you want to work with me. I sell more than anybody else. Just do it in a way that's not denigrating to other people who you want to work with you. Customers are not people to argue or match wits with. Ask questions and listen. If you know an answer and they're like, my uncle says that, like in Missouri, this is how they do it there. There are ways to say, oh, really? Oh, well, that's interesting. In our market, you don't say, well, it's not like that here. You just don't argue with people. You're not going to win if you're arguing with a customer. Customers bring us their wants, their dreams, and their problems. And we get paid to help them fill their wants and solve their problems. Customers deserve the most courteous and attentive treatment we can give them. And customers are the lifeblood of our business. How easy is it for you to be really busy and you see the phone ring and you're like, oh, not now. I just don't want to talk to them right now. But you put down what you're doing and put a smile on. Don't be annoyed. People notice it right away. I have heard, we used to have recorded floor calls because they were Zillow calls. So we would get the Zillow call and they'd be sent to me. And I know this sounds like Big Brother, but I would listen to them because I wanted to get the best ones and use it in my floor class. So it wasn't like I was like telling the agent, I didn't like the way you answered that call, but I would use it for my trainings. And you would be able to smell like whether that person was right in the middle of something and they didn't want to answer the phone. And the person's just looking for, the customer's just looking for information about a house. And you hear the agent just like, hello. So put a smile on before you answer the phone. Be grateful they're calling you because they could call somebody else. Okay, here's some other ones. I can't remember. It's been a few years since I have sold, but I did write down at some point, no Friday closings. Why is that? I think because you're waiting for you're waiting for like, you know, they have to record it at the county and that's not going to happen if it's later on a Friday. And then your seller's annoyed or your buyer's annoyed that it hasn't been recorded on the county. And they're like, what do you mean they're not working Saturdays? Just Fridays are not always the best day to have closings. Things are really, really busy at the title companies on Fridays. Everybody wants to close on a Friday so they can move in on Saturday. So if it's at all possible to just stay away from Fridays, you'll have a better experience maybe on a Monday or Tuesday. And one of the reasons, and of course, whatever your buyers or sellers want, you do it. But Fridays are busy. You want to just find out if the money arrived because your seller wants to know if it actually closed. And y'all signed at 9 a.m. and now it's 3 p.m. and you can't reach the closer. Nobody is able to reach them because they have back-to-back closings. So just know Fridays are hard. Overnight is not overnight. This time of year especially, if you have a closing and everything needs to be overnighted to someone, they need to sign and then they need to put it back in the mail and then it's going to be overnighted here. But then you got a snowstorm and the planes are down and then there's ice and then they can't find the truck and it's not going to be overnight. So just always plan ahead. This time of year, it's really hard to plan anything ahead because of the storms that come through. Some of them, unfortunately, you know, the tornadoes and everything going on. Overnight is not overnight. So plan ahead. And when you do have a closing, make sure to speak to that. So if your buyer needs to transfer funds, see if they can do it a couple days early. Just you don't know how long things are going to take. And when you are overnighting something to them, make sure that they are aware that you are going to have like an hour. You want to look this stuff through. You want to know where you're going to mail it back out if you need to, and know where you can get a notary. So get it all figured out before it comes. You will have a much better closing if you warn people that you're going to be really stressed out about waiting for this package. And then you got to turn it back around in an hour. Say, I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. But as long as you're prepared, I can help you, I don't know, find a notary where you're at, any of that stuff. Anything else that you guys can think of? You want to interrupt that you've had that experience? An ACH, so I still don't, ACHs were becoming a thing when I got out of sales. So I've been just managing for a few years. And I know most people probably just wire their funds to closing, but once in a while, when you say wire, people think ACH. And I still don't remember what that means, but all I know is it's not accepted by title companies. So just remember that, like, at least around here, ACHs aren't allowed. So we'd have somebody saying they were going to ACH it because they thought it was like an instantaneous thing. And then the title company would call me and go, you got to call your buyer. They're trying to ACH something and we don't take that. It has to be actual wired funds. So just remember there's a difference. And when somebody says they will make sure the funds are there at closing, talk about it with them. Like, find out from your title company, what exactly do you take? It used to be that someone could walk to Wells Fargo or any bank here. They get their cashier's check, they walk it over and they can deposit it. But now there's like rules about that. I can't remember. It can't be an out of state. It can't be their bank from Farmington, which is only 45 minutes from here or so. It has to be from Durango, or the rules have changed over the years. Just make sure you know them before you have a closing, so you're not stuck with somebody scrambling on closing day, because that is no fun. Don't send other parties' settlement statements to them. So as an agent, and again, I don't know what the rules are right now. I know we struggle at Distinctive to sometimes get both sides of the closing package. Let's say you're on the buyer side, but we need to see both sides to make sure the commission was done right and all that stuff. So as an agent, and I'm on the buyer side, I want to see the seller's statement to make sure the commission was calculated correctly. So I'm not trying to go and sue the agent after closing, right? So I have to see that settlement statement, but never send it to the other party by mistake. It is private information to that party. And I have been there, I have done that. And the worst thing that happens is you have your buyers like, oh my God, that seller said they were underwater. They're getting $50,000 at closing from this. That is so unfair. And they just get really steaming mad. And I could see that totally breaking up a closing. Not maybe in this market where everybody's making money, but in a different market, you have some really strong negotiations back and forth because the seller is underwater and they're just trying to get out. And then the buyer finds out they're making money on it. So, and I guess that goes into when you're sending anything back and forth to triple check. So you're forwarding an email that came to you personally, but it has information that you need to go to your buyer. Just reread the entire thread. Make sure you aren't making fun of somebody in there, making sure that there's not personal information there, because maybe you know the person and you're like, hey, remember Friday night? That was so fun. Like we were, oh man, I drank too much. And then, but it happened to have the information you needed. So you're forwarding it along and you forget to take that part out. Just reread everything before you press go 100 times. And especially if it's a very important email, sometimes when it's heavy or emotional, like obviously you want to pick up the phone, but if you have to send the email, sometimes I've even have somebody else have your manager look at it before you press go, or just have your buddy that's sitting next to you just look at it and make sure. Just be careful with electronic communication. Make sure you're texting the right person. How many times? I did that, 2 days ago? Yeah, yesterday. Texted somebody instead of my husband, and it was about our dinner, but like hot dogs. It was nothing. But it happens that you have a deal going and you're emailing the wrong customer or you're texting the wrong customer, and it just makes you look super unprofessional. So don't do it. I'm just talking to you. I haven't gotten anybody to say anything, so I'm going to keep going. Property disclosure before the offer, whenever possible. Get the property disclosure before you write an offer, if there is one available, because you want to know if there's any problems with the house. It's so disappointing to write the offer. In this market, you might be competing, but in another market, you're not competing, and you get the offer in and find out there's a mold problem. You find out there's an engineering problem, like there's a foundation issue. And your buyer wouldn't have written an offer, and you kind of wasted their time, and then they feel like you're unprofessional about it. So if the property disclosure is around, get it to the people so it can be a cleaner offer. And if you don't have it, at least ask for it. And if they don't have it, they don't have it, but you can't force the issue, but at least you're trying. Who has okay, in our market, most people have, when they're getting into a house, they have their app on their phone. Does anyone have a separate thing for that, or is it all on your phone? It's probably all on your phone. You want to nod? Like it's called Supra E-Key here. It used to be in a separate thing. Just make sure it works before you go on a showing that's out of range. We still have places that are out of range, and it is awful to be all the way out at the house and your stupid app isn't working. So if there's a way to test it before you go, just pay attention to that. And what happens is that sometimes you live out of range. Yeah, or that it's updated. So that's okay. So it's still called that. It's still called updating. That was what would happen to me. I lived out of range. and I would go and show a house that's out of range, right? So there was no time for my phone to like get to a place that it was going to update on its own. So I could call in and get my update code. That's the way it used to work. Anyway, just make sure it's working before you get somewhere, and be aware if you're out of range that there might be a problem. So does that happen to you, Heather? Oh, you're muted, but that's
Yeah,
fine.
sorry, I couldn't find my
Oh,
mute
you're
button.
fine.
Yeah, I was like out, I had checked, make sure it all worked, everything was fine, but then I went out of range and it like said that it wasn't updated. It had that line through it. And so I was panicking because I didn't want to look like a boob in front of my, the buyers. And so I'm like trying to update it real quick and calling Supra. It all worked out within like 2 minutes. Luckily, my buyers were late, but it's awkward.
Yeah, and then you have we have Forest Lake, so you have 1 bar or 2 bars at the bottom, but you have nothing up top, or it used to be that way. So you'd have to go down to the bottom of the neighborhood and hope your phone was going to update. And then what's the worst? So then another thing that would happen is, so we used to have a separate thing. So if you really were in a pinch, you could run back to the office and say, hey, can I borrow your Supra key? And we're not supposed to lend it to each other, but we would be able to borrow someone. Oh, I don't need it till tomorrow. Here, just take it. So we could run back out, but you're not going to borrow somebody's phone. So you're really out of luck if yours doesn't work. Sometimes the MLSs have a separate e-key thing that the MLSs, ours is DAR, like the association. But now that it's all on your phone, I guess you can't even do that. So I don't know. Okay. Here's another one. This is a good one. These are all mine. Until an offer is in your hand, don't tell your seller. Okay. We've got a lot of different sellers out there. Maybe in this market, you can tell them, yeah, it looks like we might have 5 offers coming in. But when the market changes and you have a seller that really wants to sell, they had a death in the family, they are getting a divorce, they're the sweet couple that's been there for 50 years and they just assumed everybody wanted to buy their home, and it's now been months have gone by and you have it priced right, but it's just a special home and it's going to take a special person. And then you hear that you're getting an offer. So you call your seller and you say, yep, we're getting an offer. So-and-so said they're bringing it today. Just know this is a very emotional experience. And there are so many buyers that know they're going to write an offer and then sleep on it, or talk to their brother, or they called their bank and they just had a change of heart. Like nothing happened. They just changed their mind. So if you went and told your seller, there's nothing more devastating. So I have called my sellers and say, we have a lot of interest from these people. I'm going to keep in touch. I'm hoping that something might happen today, even if they said I have an offer. But even if they say I have the offer in the hand, I'm just trying to meet with them so I can get the signatures. Well, what goes wrong when you're getting the signatures? You're going over the offer. It takes 45 minutes, an hour with them. They can change their mind and say, you know what? I don't know. This isn't the house for us. So just wait, just be aware of that. I've even had, sometimes I've learned in real estate, I'm one of those people, I get information, I have to tell someone right away. I used to be that way. I just have to tell everybody because you want everybody to be aware of what's going on. But there have been a few times that I have learned to hold that information close to my chest. So 8:30 at night, 9 at night, you hear that the buyer bailed and you know this is going to be devastating to your seller. So I'll wait till the next morning. I'll call them at 7:30 in the morning. They're getting ready for work. They got to move on with their lives. They're doing things. I don't want to ruin that person's night, right? So if we need a counteroffer signed, or if it went under contract, you don't wait. Like there's things you don't wait ever in real estate for those kind of things. But it's when it's devastating news, there's sometimes that I will delay just a few hours to just give them a good night's sleep before I tell them. So I hope that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, until it's in your hand, don't tell them. Does anyone on the call have something that they have learned in real estate so far that they would like to impart along any of these lines? Because otherwise, I'm just going to keep going on. It's 10:41. Okay. Keeping the real in real estate. So I'm going to tell you a story. Mike Aronson, this is the rest of what I have is all just on a couple of sheets of paper. When I was a new manager back at Coldwell, I have 60 agents here. So I wanted to rely on the top agents to help me teach some of my classes or be a speaker in my meetings. I wanted more involvement from the agents. I've learned since then. No, I'm kidding. But one of the best times that I had was when Mike Aronson, who never, ever, ever goes to an office meeting, but he's very up with what's going on. I spent my entire career trying to sit closer to Mike Aronson so I could hear him on the phone with his customers. Top-notch person with people. Like, he understands real estate, super, super smart and savvy guy. And I convinced him somehow to not only go to my office meeting, but to give a little like, who am I and what makes me different and what you should know in real estate. And so he had this like thing on the, like the screen, the big screen is back when we used to all meet together. And you could see like 1 through 10. And he talked for so long about like each one of these. And then he finally gets down to number 10. And it's like, oh my God, it's like 15 minutes that's gone by. And we're like, oh God, we got to get on with the meeting. So then you notice he has like 50 on this thing. He hadn't even gotten to 40 of them because that's who Mike is. He just really gets into what he's talking about. Anyway, that's my story. I'm keeping to it. But here are some of the things that he said that I always come back to and are framed on our wall here in Durango. Number 1, be yourself. Don't fake it. This doesn't mean like wear sweatpants to your showings, kind of be yourself. This just means don't fake your personality and who you are inside. Just be your most positive parts of your personality. Number 2, express empathy. How hard is that sometimes when you really needed this deal to close and you need to pay your bills too, but they're in a situation and the buyers have to get out of it, to just really realize where people are coming from. Empathy is one of the most important characteristics, in my opinion, of a good agent. Make it personal. Trust works both ways. I love that. Respect the clients. Never say never. That's true. People that's hard. People will say, hey, I'm looking for a $50,000 lot in town Durango. Like, you have a good idea. Okay, well, this is never going to happen unless you can't build on it. But just be careful what you say, never, because I have seen everything in real estate. Here's a good example. Mike was in this. He was the only person in my office that I've ever heard of where we have a very strict giving the earnest money back to the buyer if the buyer terminates under a reason in the contract, right? It's like a given, and that the buyer will lose that money if you go after your deadlines and you just decide to bail on closing day. And I can't remember which side of this he was on, but I remember he had a buyer and they like literally did not get their earnest money back, because you always have to remember that when you go to court, and maybe it's like $3,000 or so it's not a higher court, it's like a lower court, and it's a small claims court or something. It's like based on what that judge is feeling like that day. You're not going to have a jury. You're just going to go in there and everybody states their case, and whoever either has the best attorney or has the best things to say, it could go their way. So now I used to be the agent that said, no, this will never happen to you. I've never had a buyer lose their earnest money. And then it happens. I have had buyers lose their earnest money. So just be very careful about that. Any money is a lot of money. So just because you deal with lots of $1 million sales, and you're talking about, it might cost you $500. Yeah, we can get out of this for $1,000. But to that person, it might be a lot of money for them. So just don't get lost in these $1 million home sales and not remember the little guy who's struggling that just wants to get their first home. Be confident, super important. But also don't say things that you don't know. Say, that's a good question, I'll get back to you. Know your inventory and data. Educate yourself versus websites. Zillow's values versus with like location and riverfront. Just understand that what the websites say versus what is real. 11, never assume. How many times do you get someone that comes in on floor, or I don't know if you've had this yet, but you'll get somebody that comes in on floor and you think, well, they don't know, they can't afford that house. And then you find out they dress like that a certain way because they want to see how you're going to treat them. And you find out that they're like some, billionaire or something. So that stuff happens a lot. Don't ever assume. Know your limits and your scope, what you're allowed to say and what you're not. Anticipate hurdles, inspections, appraisals, costs, etc. So don't let your customers not understand that these things could happen. Smooth out the bumps. Exercise your sphere of influence. Do what you like. I always ask agents when they're getting into real estate, what do you like to do? Do you go to church? Do you love horses? Do you love kids? You like to mentor people? What is it that makes you happy? And just do what you love. Don't be in an organization just to get customers. Do something that actually makes you happy. Present options to clients and then let them choose. Never think that you know what's best for them. Keep brokers informed, over communicate with everybody. Don't be a secret about what's going on unless you're trying to hold your cards close to your chest. Be prepared to fail. Don't judge a book, floor. Again, that's very similar. Know our boundaries and scopes as realtors. Don't be like everyone else. Make your personality your image. Share your own story. Know your contract inside and out. Be able to quote paragraphs. I do a contract class once a year for anybody who's getting into the business in Colorado. And then part of it, there's 45 minutes or an hour about what goes in each blank. And then I have a good half hour where I run through the contract as if you're with a customer so that you know how to explain every single thing in the contract. It's a good idea that every time the contract changes to take a 4-hour contract class, but I know some people can't do that. It's just hard on your brain. So at least come to the class once a year. But yes, you should know the contract. If you have to ask your manager something, that's great, but you should read the paragraph before you meet with your manager so you understand what's in that. Because the first thing your manager is going to do when they're asked a question is, or your employing broker, is to go back to the paragraph of reference and make sure that they're reading it again. So read it again. Red flag when other agents tell you what to say to your clients. Oh my God, yes. If you're a new agent, remember you're new. Don't be saying, hey, I'm new, I don't know what to do. Like, be careful when other agents are telling you what you're supposed to say. 2 ears, 1 mouth. What would a judge say? Beautiful. So this is what the judge says when you're in court. I haven't been in court, thank God. I've watched court case. I've been with my agents in court cases. I have just never been on the stand. But what would a judge say? So what they do, you get up there and the judge looks at you when they got their reading glasses on and they say, Heather, Herb, Miss Herb, do you consider yourself a real estate professional? So whenever you're telling your customers something or you're giving them advice, any of this, always in the back of your mind say, how is this going to look that I said this when my buyer says, well, he told me to do it? Think about it. Educate clients, location, values, sales prices versus purchase prices, etc. Don't just say, oh, they want to write it up. Okay, great. I'm going to write up this $1 million deal. Explain to them what values are in the area. I had another agent tell me once, she sat next to me when I was a new agent. She said, never sell a house you don't want to resell. So just imagine that whoever you're selling that house to is getting a divorce in 3 months. They're going to call you and say, I need to sell my house. You're going, oh no. So be careful that you're explaining what they're getting into. Tell the truth, but be tactful. I don't think that needs any explaining. I've sold more folks out of homes than into them. That was definitely me. I talk people, I understand you really love this house. This is the top of what you can afford. I've been showing you houses for a while. This is way over what the other ones are. I know if you wait, we're going to find something that matches you. But if you do this, just consider that you're going to be eating tuna fish sandwiches for dinner for a long, long time. You're making a joke out of them, but you really want to tell people what they're getting into because they trust you as their advisor. Be protective of your clients. Word of mouth lasts longer and pays more than a single commission check. That's true. Because I've gotten more referrals from the people I talked out of houses than anybody else. Set personal boundaries. Clients may actually appreciate it. Look, I got little kids. I go home at 6 o'clock. I have 1 hour that I spend with my kids. We eat dinner at 6:30. I'm back on my phone at 7. And then I'm unless we have a contract issue going on, I shut my phone off at 9:15. If there's something you need from me, just let me know ahead of time and I'll be ready for you. Then I'll return things in the morning. You don't have to answer emails at all time of day, but obviously if there's a contract thing going on, like you're writing an offer, then you're around any time of the day. Do the right thing, even if it means advising to terminate. So respect the people enough to say, you might want to consider talking to an attorney right now. This might be something you want to terminate over. I know you love this house. I'm just nervous because we just found out there is a huge boundary disagreement with a neighbor that's been going on for a long time. And I don't know if you want to get in the middle of it, right? Give credit where credit is due. Always respond to clients ASAP. I used to have my phone off of me when I was showing property. I never, ever would do that. But if they really wanted to talk, or they just wanted to, maybe their kids needed a snack, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to just answer this real quick and I'll be right back. So I was always very respectful, but I'd text someone and say, hey, I'm out on a showing. I'll get back to you at 5 o'clock. Respond to them ASAP. Use data to prove value. Yep, use data. Don't be just talking off your head and go, yeah, I think this is worth $650. Have data. Admit to mistakes or oversight if it happens. So don't blame somebody else. If it was your fault, say, they told me this and I repeated it. I should have checked on it. I'm really sorry. What should we do about it? But own it. Don't blame somebody else, because people will also see that. Make this a career and not a job. Own it. Divorce clients respectfully. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. It's okay. It's not working out between us. I think I could make a better match. Let me give you to the newest agent in my office, because they'd love to help you, or your biggest enemy if they're a piece of work at another office. Be a facilitator and recourse rather than a salesperson. Love that. Open communication is key. Don't worry, I'm almost done. Don't babysit a transaction. Continue to acquire more business. That's hard as a new agent. You're like, oh my God, I got this deal. I got something under contract. I got to babysit. What am I going to do? I could run out there. I could check the propane. I could just keep getting new business and manage that deal you have, so that you can be able to manage a few deals at a time. If you don't know, you don't know. Just say it. I don't know the answer to that. That is a great question. Let me find out. Be nice. Agents will want to work with you. Be prepared and early to appointments. Do not be late to your appointments. It doesn't matter what the reason is. Follow up with questions from clients, no matter how small they are. Don't be cliche. Oh, this home is perfect for you. Clients are the judge. Let them decide. Express your success humbly. Again, that's how you don't want to be like, I'm the top agent. Why would you want to work with them? Just saying, I have great success with Mike. I've been able to serve 20 customers last year, and I would love you to be one of them. Just be humble. Learn from others what works and what doesn't. Know what not to do. That's what I'm for. I'll teach you all the stuff you're not supposed to do, because I've done it. Maintain relationships honestly and sincerely, or not. And then number 50, keep it real and do the right thing. How do you like that? Cool. Anything else? How'd you like it? Helpful? Good. Okay, that's all I got for you. No 80s videos, no nothing. I don't even know. Let's look at our schedule real quick. I don't think there's anything else. I'm not going to do one the next 2 weeks. We're done. Let's just meet up again on Tuesday in January, first Tuesday of January. Shoot me your ideas, what you need to know. Have a great day. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Heather.
Happy holidays. Bye.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.